Hello and welcome back. We're going to go through G through L. So if your last name starts with G through L, this is the video for you. I do, of course, recommend you watch the other videos. Looks like there are going to be 3 of them total. Just go ahead and watch those so you can get an idea of what everyone's been up to. Just as a quick review, I was pleased nobody needed to ask this time about coherent in style, which, in other words, your effects look intentional. Pleasing to view, you have no out-of-control colors that look unintentional. Whether or not they're intentional, if it looks like it's not intentional, that's a problem. You utilize full layer blending, so you've avoided making cutouts with masks or leaving unwanted empty space, and that it's cohesive in design. There shouldn't be pieces that unnaturally stand out from the rest of your work. Okay, so usually I get a bunch of emails asking, coherent, cohesive, but it looks like this time you guys are on this one. So let's take a look. So I've got these open. Let's view them. Okay, I've got these all open. Let's start here. So this is a pretty interesting one. It's a little bright in a few areas. So let's take a look real quick at what would happen if we use a dummy layer. I'm just going to use brightness and contrast set to 0. And I'm going to toss multiply on there. Much better. So it could be darkened up quite a bit, and I think it would maintain everything else. So let's go down the list here. So we have, what size are we at? So we should be 8.5 by 11 at 300 pixels per inch. All of that is correct. Excellent. You have a clear use of layer blending. I would say so. Clearly uses multiple layers. Indeed you do. You utilize full layer blending. Yes. All right. So let's go over these last little bits. Coherent in style. In other words, the effects must look intentional. There are a couple of effects in here that do not really look intentional, and I would say it's these overly bright dots. Those should probably be darkened up, and you could do that pretty easily with just the multiply layer. In fact, what you may even want to do is this. I'm going to add a second multiply, and on this multiply I'm going to go to its layer mask and invert it so it's nothing's there at all. I'm going to grab a big old brush, so be on the keyboard for brush, maybe not that big. Yeah, it's pretty good. And I'm going to put the white, pure white as foreground. Knock this opacity maybe 22%. And I'm just going to slowly, this is actually a good time to use a mask. Get this under control. Anywhere where everything is just, now see, it's looking a little rough. So what do you do about that? Well, you increase the brush size. There you go. So it's a softer brush. And then that would let you paint away some of this overdone effect. All right, so that would be my suggestion over there. Is it cohesive in style? And again, we have coherent, cohesive. There shouldn't be pieces that that stand out from the rest of your work. Well, kind of. Like there's this weird thing going on. This doesn't look like it fits in with any of the rest of the imagery. It looks like an amiibo just kind of taken a photo and plopped in. I would have used a different image rather than this one. It does not look like it fits. So I would say no on that point. Your colors are controlled. So you got that going for you. And I don't see any immediate anomalies. Like overall, everything seems to be working out. So 2 biggies. First off, I would darken this up because it's kind of washed out here. And if you're wondering, if you're thinking, but it looked fine on my monitor, what's going on? Well, this week we went over color and monitor calibration, so it gives you an idea of what's going on there. If you have any questions, let me know though. And then I would dim out these spots a little bit so they're not so bright. And lastly, I would replace this 3D rendering with anything else because the rest of this is all either photography or photorealistic effects. So this kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. All right, that said, let's take a look at the overall layout because it's rare that I get to talk about the layout and design. And we're going to have a couple of projects on that later in the semester. So even though this part's not really going to affect your grade, I really do want to talk about it. Overall, it's fairly successful. So we have some bright area against dark right here. Lightest light against the darkest dark. So always a good way to draw attention. We have a large light area balancing out the large dark area. We have a face, which is always something of interest to people. So we look there. We're actually ignoring at that point a lot of what's going on in this island. We have this other eye though. So we're attracted here, and that's where things fall apart because this piece does not fit in with the rest of the pieces. So I would again replace this with another figure, most likely a photograph from any of your free image libraries. All right, that said, yeah, you were getting there. You're really close. I think just 3 adjustments and you really would have nailed it. If you have any questions, though, let me know. I would not say that this is a wrong way to go about it. It's just a couple of road bumps on it. So overall, pretty successful. Just a couple of adjustments and swap out this image and you'd be good to go. Okay, let's go ahead and swap on over to the next submission. So I'm just going to close this up without saving. Oh, this is very nice. Okay, let's take a quick look. As usual, I'm just going to toss on a dummy layer, and I like to use brightness contrast, and I'm going to pop over my main go-to 3. And you'll notice that in this, I say multiply will darken everything, overlay will increase contrast, and screen will brighten everything. So the reason I said that is I do want you to think about putting this over the entire image and taking a look at how it happened. Now, sometimes I'll get people say to me like, well, I did do that. Well, sometimes it takes 2. So multiply, overlay, screen, and before normal. One more time. Multiply, overlay, multiply, normal. So you notice on multiply, we can now make out everything in the background, but we lose a little bit up here. Overlay, we lose a little bit in the back, but we can make out the face a lot better. Normal, it's a little washed out. My suggestion would actually be multiply, but not at 100%. Bring it down to around 55 or so. And look at the difference that makes. Now, if you feel as though you've lost too much in the face, this is a good time to carefully use a mask. I know that I said try to avoid cutouts, but what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to create a 0 hardness brush. It's quite large, maybe not quite that large. There we go. And I'm just going to go over with black a few times. And I'm at 22%, so I can go up to 5-ish times. And you can see how I'm just painting him back in. I do love what you did with the shirt. This is looking really good. So this would be my suggestion. Before, after, before, after, before, after. You can see where I'm going with that. And I think that increases the contrast. I think that's easier to read this overall image. This is absolutely beautiful. I love the layout. Let's talk about that for just a second before I go over the grading. We have 2 people. Now, one issue, and this would be really hard to deal with, is that both eyes are looking off the page. Now, that said, you do have a little bit of a catch. We tend to follow eyes, but we also want to look at faces. So we are following him off the image, but we have these tree branches pointing back in. And when we come back in, oh, hey, who's this in the background? Which is another reason why I'd multiply, so that the tree branches get a little darker, and we can see this background face a little bit better, so it all balances out a bit more. Now, that said, we have these rotated trees that are coming down into areas of interest. Now you put the darkest dark against the lightest light. Good job. That brings us back into the main focus. So we're coming right back to this gentleman here, who, as we notice, has the most detail in it. Even if I increase the increase the darkness in the rest of the image, he remains the center of focus. So we have an absolute center of focus. We have a carefully balanced image. Absolutely wonderful. I love what you did with the cracks in the cement. This is great. Great job. All right, that said, let's take a look at the day-to-day stuff here. We have 11 by 8.5 and a resolution of 300 pixels per inch. Well done. We have a clear use of layer blending and clearly using multiple layers. We have a full layer, I can't say that. It utilizes full layer blending. In other words, you have entire images coming across. I like to see that. It is, and one more time, coherent in style, looks intentional. Everything here looks intentional. Cohesive in style, I mean that and this is my definition of it for this piece. Never be afraid to ask the person you're working for a definition, because they might be using a different terminology than you're used to. Cohesive in style. There shouldn't be anything in the piece that unnaturally stands out from the rest of the work. Nope, it looks good. I'd even say the colors are under control. There are only a few of these fiery reds, but they carefully show up in a few places, and they're not, well, kind of a pun here, they're not burned in. Nothing looks super weird or out of place there. So you have the colors are controlled, and there are no immediately visible anomalies. And overall, this is a gorgeous piece. Well done. Again, my main suggestion would be a bit of a multiply, and boom, you've got a real winner here. Good job. Let's go ahead and roll on down to the next submission.
Interesting thoughts there.
So I'm just going to go ahead and close this up, and away we go. All right. Well, we've got a postcard. Well, this is great. Are you the correct size? You are in no way the correct size. So this is incredibly tiny, and it should actually be 8.5 by 11. All right, let's ignore that for a minute and just go over the rest of it. What do we got here? So wrong size, right resolution at least. So we got that going for it. You have a clear use of layer blending. I'd say so with California. I love how you cut the bear out on the mountain range. That's really nice. It has... It clearly uses multiple layers, absolutely. Utilizes full layer blending. I cannot tell, so I would have pushed this a little bit further so that I could see that. That's part of the key, is to, try to show off what you've got going. It is coherent in style and cohesive in design. Good job on that. Your colors do, well, I'd almost say that they're under control, except we've got this red blob, which is weird. There's nothing else like that anywhere in there, so almost under control. Any immediately visible anomalies? Well, I can't see anything because it's too low resolution, so I can't really say. So major changes here. I'd recommend pushing the blending modes a little bit further. You saw the things that I was going for. That previous image was absolutely stellar. That's really something that I'd want to see. If you remember from the beginning of the videos when I was showing in the lecture videos when I was showing the student work, that's what I was after. That said, very clever work with the bear. You did not get the resolution correct, so do make sure that you go back over the requirements before you turn it in. In this case, 8.5 by 11, 300 pixels per inch, and ping file, and at least you are in fact a PNG file, which is great because you want all those to be PNG files. All right, good job on that. Okay, so those are my suggestions. Again, you're not really going for full layer utilization. I am curious to see what would happen if I used a dummy layer set to overlay. No, soft light. I actually think that's a bit of an improvement. So, and this is not a bit of an improvement in the way that it's cleaning up the photography of the image. It's just making it more interesting as an art piece, since that's what it's going for. Again, with the resolution this low, I'm missing a lot. This weird red blob, though, is not something that I wanted to see, and I would have liked to have seen full layer blending going on rather than just the small areas, although this is very clever. Okay, so that's, now you've seen what I was looking for, and that's, again, I'm referencing stuff from the initial lecture videos where I showed the student work. If you have any questions, let me know. Meanwhile, let's go ahead and roll on to the next submission. All right, let's roll on down. If I ever repeat, by the way, just to let you know, I do temporarily pause between videos and I punch in my notes so that I remember what to grade you guys when everything's said and done. So that's why sometimes I repeat myself between clips. Anyway, moving on. Let's not save. We will. Ooh. Okay. Yes. I like it. But how would this look with a brightness contrast dummy layer set to multiply? Look at that. I think that's even better. Let's knock down the opacity on that. Now notice I'm not doing fill opacity. I want to maintain the integrity of the effect. And remember, multiply is one of the fill opacity 8. So in other words, it's handled differently if you do the fill opacity as compared to the overall opacity. Now, you're not really going to notice a difference in this event in this situation, because it's a duplicate of the underlying layer. So really either of these should have about the same effect. But that said, just to keep in mind that multiply will behave differently with fill than it will with opacity, I'm going to go ahead and just lower opacity to 60. So before, after, look at that moon. So that would be my suggestion on here. Just toss on a multiply at 60% and look at those colors sing. But this is brilliant. Very well done. So it looks like your topmost layer had the buildings and probably a very bright sky, and so you just knocked it into a mode that knocked that out. Good job. And then you've got these this gorgeous moon and all these great bits. Now that said, I think you could have put maybe a little more layer blending, maybe with a clipping mask on this thing, and really given some extra texture to the building itself, or maybe even in the windows if you played your cards right when you're blending everything together. Let me see if I can dig something out in my giant box of copyright-free images here. It struggles to load them all. I really want a night sky. Oh, look at that. I do have some stuff from blending, specifically from blending mode. So let's see what I got. I've got some moons, but we've got a moon. I really just want some starry sky, which I generally have floating around somewhere. Ooh, lightning. That could be good, but let's not waste your time with that. I'm going to pause the video for just a second while I dig out wherever I put my night sky. Be right back. Found one. So here we have starry sky. Let me toss this thing right in here. And so we've got a starry sky, but we need to punch this up. Let's pop this over. Color dodge should do the trick, but knock down the opacity on this a little bit. So watch out on this. This may actually be a good time to toss on a mask. I know I said to generally avoid them, but the reason I'm doing this is that you could actually just have the moon. If I had all the layers, you could just move the moon above it. So to demonstrate, let me, bam, pop that out. All right, that's pretty good. In fact, that might just be a good time to use a blending mode or a mask on your blending mode. All right, so the reason this is working though, is because I have the multiply. Without it, it's burning everything too much. The multiply will kick that back. So this is the sort of adjustment that I would recommend. Now you can see how we have the starry sky as a texture inside of the rest of the building, which I think is quite interesting. If I had access to the original file, I'd probably actually put this night sky here behind the building and then let the building's blending mode kick in to affect it with the windows. But I don't, so this is what I do to counteract it. Now this is a little burned in, so you'd want to play around with the opacity and the fill opacity until you get the colors under control, because right now my colors are not under control, so you've got to watch out for that. That's better. And then you get set. So those are the changes I would suggest. Toss on multiply, maybe 60%, and this is just on a dumbing layer, toss on some texture to the rest of the building so you can show a full blending layer effect. I think that punches it up. That said, this is a very interesting layout. I really like it. I like how nothing is dead center. Everything's rotated just a little bit. You have the contrast of these hard angles as compared to the round shape of the sky. You have one of the brightest objects and one of the darkest objects, and it's your center of focus. Your eye is drawn straight to the moon, and that's where it stays. But there's some color matching in it, so you start to focus in on the rest of it. Overall, very well done. Okay, we have it at the correct size. Now, does it have a clear use of layer blending? Yes. Clearly uses multiple layers? Absolutely. Utilizes full layer blending? I'd say that you kicked out the whole sky, so that's doing it. All right. It is coherent in style, cohesive in design. Your colors are controlled, and there are no immediately visible anomalies. Again, I just do a few adjustments, and then I think you're ready to go. And again, you can see how I can't affect the image the way that you could if you went in there and did this on individual layers. So there are a few things you could change coming in. I'm going to do one more fun thing. Hold down the Alt key and drag the layer mask from the, whoa, wrong one. Should have been Alt. There we go. Alt key, drag the layer mask down. So now we've got two of these. Duplicate this, the multiply layer, invert the mask, Control I. So now we've got the moon separate from the rest of it. Now that I have the moon separate from the rest of it, just going to knock down the opacity to, say, 10%. That's better. So yeah, these are the adjustments that I'd recommend. I know I said try to avoid masks, but I don't think you'd need to use them if you had the original file. If you did, this is a simple enough mask. It's just a circle. Okay, overall, very well done. Let's go ahead and roll on to the next submission. Oh, before I go, everybody, hopefully everyone's watching all of these videos and not just their own. Don't forget, if you tighten this up a little bit, I have some suggestions on that, but you can ignore me if you don't like my suggestions. That's fine. You can go to Society 6 and make an account and sell your stuff. This will make a pretty rad mouse pad or a pretty sweet tablet cover if you just cut it a little bit in. So yeah, Society 6 will let you print these things on other things, and since you used copyright free images, guess what you can do? You can sell your original works. Money. I know that broke college students don't need money, but in the off chance that you just want some, try it. Okay, here we finally go on to the last one in this batch, and so that means that if you're a G through L, this should be you. If you don't see yourself, do let me know. Interesting. I can dig it. All right, let's take a look. Oh, it's a building. It's pretty cool. So first thing I always do is toss on a dummy layer, and then going back to here, remember, you can add blending options to adjustment layers to emulate duplicating the entire image and setting to a blending mode. Multiply will darken, overlay will increase contrast, screen will brighten everything. So let's try those. Multiply. Don't like that. Screen. No. Well, actually, we'll come back to that in a second. Overlay. Nope, that ruins the effect. Let's pop over to screen for just a minute. Here it is without screen. Here it is with screen. Now, I would do this in 2 moves. I would come in and use the pen tool. Wherever you are, pen tool. Tra-la-la-la-la. Pen tool, and I'm going to set you to be a path. And I'm just going to come in real quick. Spacebar to move the point after you've started drawing it. Have we covered the pen tool yet? Shoot, now I can't remember. Oh, we might not have covered the pen tool yet. All right, so, well, if we covered the pen tool, I have to double check. Everything's blurring together at this point in the semester. That would be the displacement map assignment. I can't remember. Did we do that one yet? It's all a blur. Let's not use pen tool for this. Just in case you haven't covered pen tool yet, because I am suddenly forgetting where we are in the semester. Yeah, we'll use magnetic lasso tool. Pretty close. So you want to come in here and be a little bit cleaner than I am. Lasso tool would be fine. You can also paint in the mask, whatever, just to give you an example. All right, bloop. So we've got that. And I'm going to blur this. How am I going to do that? I'm going to click on the layer mask. I'm going to go to filter, blur, and then Gaussian blur. Gaussian blur. And that is way too much Gaussian blur. Not enough Gaussian blur. That's about the right amount of Gaussian blur. All right, tell it okay. So notice that if we alt click, it's blurred. Good for us. So we can alt click to go back in. All right, so we've got only half of it being affected. What do we do now? Duplicate this entire thing and invert the mask. Control I. So now these are separate components. So I'm going to click on this screen and I'm going to lower this one. And now I can control them separately. I'm going to increase this one a bit. And then on that one here, I'm going to decrease it. I don't think we need as much. I think that blends together better. So here it is before. Here it is after. I think we can see everything a little more clearly and it hasn't lost the style. So that's my suggestion of an edit there. Do a cleaner mask than my slapdash job. I'd use the pen tool if we've covered it. If not, you can come in and very slowly use the polygon lasso tool, or you can kick into quick mask mode and paint in the mask using all of your standard brush tools. And I know we've covered brushes. I remember grading that one. So we've got that going for us. Have we? For the life of me, I cannot remember. Let me pop over here. Assignments. It's going to drive me crazy. Hold on. I don't want to get ahead of myself. We have done greetings from MJC, 2-color graphic, color and contrast brushes, patterns and automation, blending art, colorize a photo. Okay, yeah, we have not covered pens yet. We're going to do that a little bit later, I think in just a couple of assignments. So once we've done that, it's really easy to do these masks. Meanwhile, can try to force your way through with Polygon Lasso tool will work fine. Okay, anyway, let's look at everything. We have the correct size. Excellent. We have the correct resolution. The clear use of layer blending clearly uses multiple layers, utilizes full layer blending. It is coherent in style, cohesive in design, and the colors are controlled. I do love this pink, by the way. Good job on it. All right, no immediate anomalies. So the thing that I would change is just brighten it up a bit, and I think this is even overdoing it. I'd knock both of these down by 10%. 40 on this one. 85 on that one. Actually, even less, maybe 75. There we go. And so before, after, it just causes a slight washed out effect, which I think works well with this imagery. Let's talk about this imagery while we're in here. It's great. So we've got this these reflected trees, it feels like, coming in, and it cuts out the shape of other trees. And we have these lines, these graphic lines pushing up. So we're looking up and we're looking back down. We have areas of interest. We have an animal looking over in this direction towards the brightest spot, which, by the way, this color is reflected in this imagery. Beautiful. So we have this trifecta going on, this little point, but there's a little splash up here. So we're not just trapped. There's a little more in there, and we get drawn back down to the wolf that shows us off. But what's this down here? We have a triangle with the hands pointing in the opposite direction of the curved lines, which are bringing us up as one of the lighter items. And on top of that, what is it that we like to look at? It's faces, eyes, and hands. We like looking at heads and hands. In fact, their entire class is on heads and hands. Here's Caravaggio. Let's take a look at some of these beautiful Renaissance works of a guy getting his head cut off by his maid. Yeah, anyway, let's kick a couple of these open real fast. It's just beautiful art. Oh, I love them. Okay, let's just look at these. Thank you, Google. Look, what's in here? What are we looking at? We've got hands pointing. We've got faces looking. We have a slice of light coming in. We're lighting areas, but it's the hands and the faces we're looking at. It's the hands and the head again. He loves stabbing people right in the frickin' face. So we've got heads and hands, heads and hands, heads and hands. It's going to be the part that we look at. And if you master nothing else, if you're going into life drawing and the figure arts, heads and hands. So here we have just these beautiful heads and hands. Everything else just fades into darkness, but the heads and the hands don't. And let's look at Titian, I think it's how you pronounce this. Another Renaissance painter, and again, it's the heads and the hands. We have other spots of light, but the things that we look at as humans are the heads and the hands. We're going to look at those because that's where we learn the most about the person we're dealing with. So keep that in mind. If you're trying to move the eye around, one of the things that carries the most weight are faces, eyes, and hands. And you can point and you can get things going in directions. So we've got these hands facing down, and then we're pulled back up line by line, all the way over to these upside down trees. We slide around at these eyes and these little faces and these hands. And this is just an absolutely lovely layout. But again, the thing I would do is this doesn't quite all sync up easily enough repaired just using a couple of screen modes. So before, after, before, after. All right. So that's what would be my suggestion on this one. Overall, very well done. I do love this layout. Excellent design work. Woo! All right, so that's everybody G through L. Tune in next time. We're going to go through M through S. Meanwhile, this is what we've got, and I do hope that you've stuck around for these videos. We've just got one more, and we'll have gone through all those. So great job, and away we go.